to the Kingdom Athletes podcast. I'm your host, Sam Gonzalez, and we are calling this episode 0. Now, the ultimate goal of this podcast is to just give you the backstory and the vision for the Kingdom Athletes podcast. There's a million podcasts in the world right now. Why add another one? Well, we want to tell you. This is definitely going to be a shorter podcast because it's just me staring at a camera. There's no guest today, but I know the significance of an origin story, and so I want to be able to share that. And what I'm believing this podcast is going to be for those who watch it and join the community. And also, it's just going to serve as a placeholder for people who join the podcast later, episodes later, maybe even seasons later. They're going to be able to go back to it, see what the podcast is all about, and really just have that understanding moving forward. So for myself, sports have played a massive role in my life, like many people I know. It's one of those things where sports it transcends so many things. Just with all the division in our world today, like sports brings people together, and that's one of the things that makes it so beautiful. It doesn't matter what your age, race, gender, cultural background, sports bring people together, and that's one of the key reasons why even doing a podcast like this. But also just for myself personally, having played so many sports over my life and just knowing the impact it had on me, I want to be able to speak to athletes. And so, I played a little bit of baseball, a little bit of golf, a little tennis, played a bunch of different things, but hockey was my main sport. That was my bread and butter. I started playing at 4 years old. I feel like I could skate pretty much as soon as I could walk. And my entire life was hockey for the better part of 16 years. And probably loved it too much because my entire worth and identity were tied into what I could do on the ice and the accolades that came with it, which made when I got hurt absolutely devastating. While playing juniors, one fluke play led to an injury that brought my playing career to a screeching halt, and I found myself depressed, lost, and I genuinely didn't even know who I was, right? And so I spent a few years searching for just peace, joy, happiness, identity in the things this world has to offer, like so many people I know, and I had no success. I was still sad. I was still broken, still depressed, and had no idea who I was. And at 21, God met me exactly where I was in my brokenness and scooped me up. And my life has never been the same since. I put my faith in Jesus, and from that day forward started living for him. And over the last decade and some change, I have become a pastor. I've had the privilege of leading the youth ministry at my local church and just serving those teenagers, preaching identity to them, finding their worth in not the things this world has to offer, but in who God created them to be. And so 5 years ago, roughly, God brought hockey back into my life in a way that only he could, with an opportunity to become the chaplain for the professional hockey team in the same city that I got hurt in. Just think about that for a second. Only God could do that. Brings hockey back full circle. And so now I am a full-time chaplain for hockey players. And that means my life revolves around sports and faith and how those two are woven together. And so that's really where the vision for the Kingdom Athletes originated. The goal is to create a community of athletes who find their worth in Jesus, not the sports they play. That they would find their worth in Jesus, not the sports they play. That's absolutely massive, and that's what we're going after here. And our guests will include pro athletes, college athletes, high school athletes, coaches, chaplains, and really just even people in the sports world who also proclaim faith in Jesus. And we're going to be able to have some great conversations. And I couldn't be more excited about doing this podcast, stepping out of my comfort zone and stepping into a little bit of deeper water here by, getting on social media, things like that. But I just know that God is doing something in the sports space with faith, and you've seen it just over the last couple of years, athletes becoming more and more bold with their faith. And so the main verse that inspired the name Kingdom Athletes and also the logo is 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 and 25. And so I just want to read it so everybody knows what we're going after here. It says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Now that's the ESV translation. In the NIV translation, the way it's written there, the imperishable is actually crown. So it's this whole idea of a perishable wreath turning into a crown that will last forever. And it's in these two verses that Paul just does a phenomenal job highlighting the heart of an athlete who is dedicated and disciplined in their craft to become better. And that applies to our spiritual lives as well. What does it mean to be absolutely focused on what matters most? And that's where the crown comes in, because the imagery that we see here, a wreath, something that you work hard to get, right? You're going to get this wreath, this crown that's put on your head, as they would back at like the beginning of the Olympics when it all started back then. It's going to fade away, but the crown will not. And that represents the kingdom of God. There's only one kingdom worthy of dedicating your life to, and that's the kingdom of God. And so I'm believing and I'm praying that the stories that will be shared on this podcast will encourage, will challenge, and motivate athletes to grow in their faith, to take a step closer to God, to put Jesus as the King and Lord of their lives, and to live that out boldly. So if you've watched this video up to this point, I would greatly appreciate it if you would give us a like, a follow, maybe even comment in the video, the crown emoji, and we will see you next week for episode 1.